Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hey there, and welcome to today's Art of Procurement Friday show. And I hope you're having another great week. Actually, as you hear this, I'll have just returned from the Cooper Inspire conference where I'm going to be interviewing, I think it's 5 different procurement executives, including 2 or 3 CPOs for upcoming episodes. So I definitely can't wait to share those with you. And then tomorrow, I'm heading off to the ISM 2016 conference in Indianapolis in Indiana. And this is actually the first ISM conference that I'm going to have visited, and I'm really looking forward to it. I don't have any interviews planned. I'm just going to be there to meet fellow procurement professionals and really learn as much as I can that I can then share on subsequent episodes. So if you're planning on being at ISM 2016, I would really love to connect with you. Just send me a message on Twitter, a DM, or email me, which is at pideson, Pideson, at procurechange.com. So as you may know, we recently sailed past 50 episodes on the show, and to celebrate, I compiled a free report in which I share 50 different lessons that I learned from interviewing procurement thought leaders so far. I have made that available. Just all you need to do is to get your copy of the report is head on over to artofprocurement.com/50 lessons, pop in your email address there. You'll just have to confirm it, and then I'll get that report straight over to you. So that's artofprocurement.com/50 lessons. Okay, so you may recall back in episode 47, I think it was, that I asked you a question. And it was actually based on a really interesting search term that a listener had used to find the show. And the question was, how can we make procurement less boring? Yep, that's how can we make procurement less boring? And I actually wanted to explore this from a couple of different angles. How do we make the profession less boring to work in? And then how do we change perceptions of those on the outside of procurement looking in? And as well as asking you in the show, I also posed the question to 3 different groups in LinkedIn, and I'll actually link up to those questions and answers so that if you're in those groups, you can actually kind of take a look at all the different responses that I received. In summary, the great news is that at least when we look at us working in profession of procurement, we love it. A lot of people fed back that they really love what they do, and that was obviously a great thing to see. You know, I was really overwhelmed with the responses, to be honest with you. I had almost 100 replies from all corners of the world, and it's obviously a topic that we're all very passionate about. As I read through everyone's perspectives, I decided to reach out to a few different commenters to ask them if they could record a voicemail with the thoughts that they put in the comment section to really bring those to life, you know, figure out a way to take them from the page into the podcast. And I had 3 different voicemails that I wanted to share that I really think capture the spirit of the responses to that question. And the first one is from Chris Ness. And Chris is the UK Managing Director of Ubico. I think that's how you pronounce it. Hopefully I'm not butchering the name of that company. But Chris argues that what we do really is challenging and exciting. Here's what Chris thought.
Procurement faces the same potential issue as other organisational support services in the context of any business environment, such as finance, for example. However, the art of procurement, much like the art of finance, is about navigating internal functional divisions to work closely with colleagues and gain a deep understanding of internal stakeholder and end customer requirements. To this end, I would argue that so-called boring support services can represent the key differentiation between competing businesses in rapidly changing markets. Doesn't get much more challenging or exciting than this.
And then I really loved this response from Linda Michaels, the second voicemail I'm going to play. Linda's the former vice president of ISM, the Institute of Supply Management, and she's now a principal at Aripat Consulting. So if you ever question the role that we can play or the role that we do play, then you really need to come back and listen to the clip, really for a motivational boost. And the bill that Linda references in this outtake, in this comment and voicemail, is Bill Michaels, Linda's husband. And Bill was actually a guest on the show think it was episode 37 talking about mega trends, but I'll link up to that in the show notes. So here's Linda.
After college, I was an electrical engineer who had amazing jobs that took me all over the world and allowed me to learn how everything works, like nerves firing in your body, or PC hardware and software, and even how weapons fire. My husband Bill was in procurement, and I thought, what a boring job that must be. But he also traveled the world and in his career traded commodities and bought MRO, packaging, steel, resins, chemicals, electronics, and just about everything. Then I joined him in his procurement consulting business, and I discovered that he and most procurement folks know all kinds of manufacturing processes and can tell you every step from the dirt in the ground to the fizz to the way that top pops on the can of soda or beer that you're drinking. While I thought I was special in college because I tutored calculus and Black-Scholes models, Bill Michaels and John Pooley were presenting a talk to buyers on derivatives and hedging. They were applying those sophisticated mathematical models to procurement strategies. Who knew? The more I became entrenched in procurement, the more I loved and appreciated the art of procurement and how fortunate I am now to be part of this marvelous profession. Whether you buy services, capital equipment, raw materials, or finished goods, you make the difference in your organization's success. You are the source of innovation and value, and you know how it all works. So, how can procurement be boring?
And the final voicemail comes from Chris Gallagher. Chris is the former long-time Director of International Strategic Development at CIPS, which is the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. Chris is currently the Managing Director at procurement consultancy firm CGA.
Well, I've never found it boring in the first place. That's the first comment. But I'll iterate what I put in the blog. I think any business activity can be boring, and that does include marketing and sales. If people operating it choose to stay in what I call the conserver-holder camp, who maintain the status quo at all costs and avoid changes and change generally, like the plague. Procurement's not boring, but those people who were originally attracted or fell into it also found it a safe haven most certainly are. We need to be in the adapter dealer camp, demonstrating that we have a dynamism, charisma, and inventiveness in bucket loads. The days of the purchasing clerk are over, or at the very least, in most forward-thinking economies now limited.
And Chris, to me, really got to the crux of the problem. If you look at the traditional procurement model, it is boring in the context of what is possible today. So if that is all that your procurement department is doing, essentially being an administrative rubber stamp, then I think it's next to impossible to change that boring tag until you really look at your value proposition and start developing the capabilities necessary to be more than just that administrative team, to be more than just a rubber stamp on contracts. The good news is that most organizations are somewhere on that development or that transformation. They're not starting off from the base where they are just administrative. What's interesting to me is that I've always felt that while I was a practitioner, we didn't collectively do a great job of celebrating our wins and communicating the value that we can bring. And instead of figuring out how to do it, we just lament the fact that nobody recognized the value that we bring. You know, that I'm doing all this great work and nobody's recognizing it. Why don't people understand?
And with that in mind, there was a couple of comments from Vlada Danuoj that really stood out to me. Vlada wasn't able to leave a voicemail before I put together the show, but here is the comment.
What I notice in many reactions is that people are surprised their profession can be considered boring, and then they talk immediately about many nice strategic things and tools that they do in procurement. And that's exactly the problem. While we as procurement professionals are enjoying every day of our job, internal customers can hardly see that excitement. So why is the gap? Well, to me, Vlada said, it's all about treating problems of the business as your own. Procurement strategy is supposed to support and build on the business strategy, not the other way around. And networking with your customers and their involvement in the things that you do is really essential. And finally, what Vlada said, and this really stood out to me, was that in many cases, procurement and the business just coexist next to each other, both prioritizing their own stuff. And that has to change. Mutual, open collaboration is the key. And with a word of motivation, Vlada ended, team up. And these thoughts were reiterated by Ria Nehra. And Ria said that she's never known borrowing, but changing perceptions is definitely necessary. Ria said that a procurement manager needs to be not just a good negotiator or someone with market knowledge, but they have to know the company's business as well as, if not better than, a sales or an operations manager. Finally, Ria said that a procurement manager needs to have empathy with internal client requirements, while also focusing on building visibility through examples of digital, social media, but essentially creating a positive user experience. And then there was one final comment that I wanted to reference, and this is from Mayan Nissan. Mayan said, the key is synchronizing with the company's long-term strategy, being proactive and influential, managing cross-functional communication with peers, and fully understanding a company's vision. If you do that, then it's never boring. The procurement function can and should be a key contributor to the company's success and strategic decisions. And I think that we all agree with that statement from Mayan. So let's go back to the original question. How do we make procurement less boring? First, I think this is definitely for the minority. Then in my view, we need to take a look at what our procurement organization does and what it delivers, and determine if we're truly bringing value to our employers. And by value, I want to differentiate between what we think value is and what our C-suite thinks value is, because those may be two very different things. We think we're creating a ton of value, but our executives may not have the same view as we do. So when we look at our functions, are we operating as what I call a holder-upper? Are we getting in the way of our stakeholders, or are we an enabler? Are we helping our businesses be successful, or whatever success means to them? If we're a holder-upper, then we need to start there. We need to change from being that. We're going to be considered anything but boring while we have that mindset, in my opinion. But if we seek to be an enabler, then in my opinion, the key to changing perceptions can really be thought around in one thing, and that's act and do like a service provider, rather than being just a business function. And when I think about that, when I say being a service provider, acting like a service provider, it really comes down to three different things, I think. Firstly, we must ensure that we're in alignment with our C-suite and that we make all of our interactions with our stakeholders, with our executives, it's about what we can do for them, not how they can help us meet our objectives. I know that's something that I've said a few times on the show recently, but that I think is foundational to changing the perception of procurement. Next is focusing on delivery and delivering over and above what our stakeholders expect from us, surprise and delight them on a consistent basis. If we do that, then they're always going to see a value in what we bring. And to me, that's just the table stakes. That allows us to continue kind of providing more and more activities that create more and more value for our stakeholders. And the third one is be proactive about pushing the envelope in terms of solutions we can deliver. We know there's a lot that procurement can do, and for the most part, our businesses don't really understand that. So let's not wait for permission. Let's not wait for them to come to us and say they want us to do X. We should be there at the forefront demonstrating what we can do so that it makes it so compelling that they can't imagine a world without us being able to provide those things for them. So do you agree or do you disagree? I really love the debate that this topic has stimulated. So I would definitely enjoy if you could go into the comments for the show notes for today's episode. And they're going to be at artofprocurement.com/boring. That's artofprocurement.com/boring. And leave me a comment or just respond to me on Twitter. I'd love to kind of continue this debate because I think that it's something that is really critical to continuing to elevate our role, because we need to change the perceptions of what people think about us on the outside. All right then, well, I'm going to head over to the airport to go to a conference that I think is going to be anything but boring. You'll hear about that in a little bit more from me in future episodes. But until then, have a great weekend. and I'll be back again with another interview show this coming Tuesday. So take care, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Art of Procurement. To find an archive of all past episodes, you can go to artofprocurement.com/episodes. And to ensure you never miss another show, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe.